Hello everyone, my name is Benjamin Büscher. I'm a research associate at TU Dortmund University, where I work in the departments of sports sociology and pedagogy. Today I'm going to give an insight into my PhD thesis on the changing organizational structures in skateboarding. I am going to start with my theoretical framework based on 3 selected works from the so-called skateboard studies, from which I am going to derive my research interest. Then I will continue with my research methodology based on organizational ethnography. My results will be presented with 3 field practices of organization, which then will be discussed on the background of skateboarding subculture, but also with regard to existing organizations of sport. I am going to frame my state of research on the basis of 3 studies on skateboarding that can more or less be connected to the field of cultural studies, starting with the work by Ian Borden, who describes skateboarding as a subcultural practice, such as the movement practice of a rolling sports that takes place in different environments, such as the street, the city, or specifically designed skate parks, who form a meeting place for an informal social group, a youth culture mostly consisting of adolescents who in their skateboarding scene reproduce particular style elements with regard to fashion, language, or a particular use of media. This state of the art is continually questioned on the background of an ongoing cultural transformation. For example, in the work by Veit Kilbert and Jürgen Schwier, who describe an ongoing sportification of skateboarding with regard to its integration to the Olympic Games. The result is a formalization of the competition format as well as rating scales, but also an institutionalization into existing sports club, but also the foundation of new sports associations. Another side effect is the pedagogical production into education and training formats that take place in different pedagogical settings, as pointed out by the Moving Borders study by Atencio, Beal, Wright, and McLean. Skateboarding is taught and learned in regular schools and physical education lessons, but also extracurricular activities, a field of study I have also conducted research on. I have mentioned the integration into conventional sports clubs, but way more common, and that is shown by the Moving Borders studies, are learning environments such as clinics, lessons, academies, camps, or sleepovers, which do not fit into existing organizational structures of sports. And here the state of research stops, leading me to my personal research design of an organizational ethnography of such a learning environment. The approach has been designed by IB, Marjanov, Wells, and Kamstik for the analysis of the logics of organizational structures such as temporal proceedings, spatial patterns, but also a general overview on a meso level of such organizations. They are connected to formal arrangement such as the entry fee, but also informal access boundaries such as sympathy and individual dispositions, my age, for example. But I was able to grow into a community of practice and gain insight on it from an inner perspective of an ethnographer as an active participant in the field by skateboarding and also following the different organizational structures of the field. The structural analysis was also happening on the basis of the field's practices, which I interpreted as pedagogical ones, by following practices of teaching, learning, and also the organization of the field as a joint action or interaction that reveals particularities of a specific pedagogical field of sport. The field of sport also poses a higher threshold based to my own motor skills, but also the challenge of growing into existing social patterns and hierarchies. My research plan frames the field on the basis of the three questions where, when, and who. After a period of orientation, I narrowed my field down to one indoor skate park in my hometown Dortmund, also a pragmatic decision where I was able to conduct 45 field trips in one group that met once a week for 3 hours in the time frame of February 2019 to March 2020. The group consisted of 70 participants who joined the offer there, but also 6 peer teamers from the skateboarding subcultures who taught parts from it. On average, there were 20 participants and 2 teamers per session. In the course of the already described ethnography, I was able to conduct different kinds of data. My primary method was the participant observation, with I collected 250 pages of field protocols, but also succeedingly field interviews that were transcribed into 100 pages of transcripts of verbal data. This pack of data was continuously coded on the basis of the grounded theory methodology based on the approach of Corbin and Strauss, and succeedingly my codings were then put into a praxeological perspective based on Bourdieu. I am going to present my results on the basis of an open coding following the grounded theory. It is applied to a selected field situation from which I have reconstructed 3 different practices of organization. Due to time reasons, I'm not able to read out the complete field protocol, so I highly recommend you stop the presentation at this point, take your time to read out the anchoring examples, and resume the presentation for the presentation of my results. The first anchoring example is an extract from an observation protocol depicting the title-giving organization form of the sitting circle. I have coded it as a ritual because it seems to be an automatized behavioral pattern by the whole group that is not explicitly called in by the peer teamers. Only its beginning is marked by an acoustic signal at a particular starting point that hints at a fixed time frame which has been confirmed by its reoccurrence in every field day I have attended. However, those rituals do not seem to be known to all participants, as the collective introduction as well as the repetition of the group's rules show. That hints at a particular dynamic group structure with flexible options of entering and leaving the field, and it remains open in how far those rituals adapt to or originate from the specific group structure. To follow this trace, we need to zoom in the sitting circle, and I have selected a second anchoring example as a transcription of a verbal conversation among participants and teamers. Vivo-coded rules of the group are explicitly stated. They seem to be established to a certain extent, but are also questioned by the participants. The rules can be differentiated into different types, whether they refer to the general behavior in the skate park or to the collective skateboarding as a group with particular dispositions and demands. Furthermore, the heterogeneous group structure becomes clear when participants question and even criticize the necessity of the rules. That calls for an ongoing effort of semantization by the teamers, and it seems that the acceptance rises the closer the rules are connected to skateboarding itself as the primary reason of participation. As third anchor, we again have an extract of a protocol from another Fields Day, as the date shows. Yet these practices are constantly reoccurring, so that the combination of anchors form a thick description of a situation that can happen every other session. Again, we have different time phases that, together with the first anchor, add up to a relatively fixed agenda contributing to the field's organizational structure. Further rituals are acted out by the participants, but this time a participant violates the implicit ritual and therefore is punished by a teamer. So the hiding of the skateboard acted out by the teamer can be coded as the sanctioning of the here unintended transgression of rules. The consequences do not seem as severe and vary up to the point of open scolding in front of the group or a temporary ban to skate. Due to time reasons, I can only hint at the practice of sanctioning, yet an interpretation from a pedagogical perspective stands out. In conclusion, I have reconstructed 3 practices from my ethnographic data that at least hint at a specific organizational structure of the field. Yet, this structure needs to be enriched by more anchoring examples and contextualized with related fields of sports and skateboarding in particular. The organization of the field at hand appears to be interconnected with a dynamic group structure comparable to conventional sports clubs, focusing on particular sports and homogeneous age groups. The dominant group of participants to which the explicit rules and more implicit rituals are accustomed to seem to be children, which allows further interpretation of the field as age-specific social spaces and organizations. As a response to the childish demands, the organizational practices are reproduced and stabilized by the peer teamers, whose particular roles remind us to the ones of teachers in established school systems. Yet its dynamic due to flexible member turnovers present the field more open. Not always explicitly and more often unintentionally, the structures are neglected by participants, which presents the organizational structure to be a matter of ongoing discussions among participants and teamers. In summary, the organizational structure of the field cannot be clearly labeled. It presents a negotiation between conventional formal structures and informal spaces for free development. The open question of legitimization can be responded to with the result that it is a specific offer for beginners, mostly children, who are often overwhelmed with the complex demands of skateboarding and the skate park. That again reconnects to the theoretical framework, especially the moving borders studies. Although other sources criticize such settings as a domestication of skateboarding, even though their emergence seems only logical and natural on the background of the subculture's developmental stage. The discussion is ongoing, and from a less normative point of view, I suggest that my field is to be regarded as a partial cultural transformation in a pedagogical framework. Outstanding is the recontextualization in the complete picture of skateboarding. Here are my works cited, my own publications are indented. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the following discussion. Please check out the links below for further research of mine and an invitation to Germany, which can also be found in my uploaded PDFs. Enjoy the rest of AIESEP.